What's up guys, Toebbe here, aka Shay, and welcome back to The Creative Quest. You are watching episode number 21. Alright everybody, episode 21 of The Creative Quest. I'm here with my husband, Nick Toebbe. And we're actually starting a kind of mini-series on the Creative Quest about audio production and audio engineering. And he is the expert in this particular field of everything music and has a lot of incredible things to say and thoughts to share that are very valuable, that have taught me a lot, that I thought would be perfect to bring on the show. And I think we'll be seeing a lot of you on the Creative Quest.
Hopefully.
Yeah, it will be great. So, Love, why don't you tell us kind of how you started in music?
I started music when I was like 12. I wanted a guitar for Christmas, and I got a weight bench instead one time. Didn't sit right with me for a little while, and it made me want to play guitar that much more. So I ended up borrowing a guitar from my uncle, who was, he's been playing guitar as long as I've known him / been alive, and that. So eventually I ended up borrowing one of my uncle's guitars. He's been playing guitar since before I was born. It just kind of went from there. I remember very specifically one time we were over at my grandma's house and he brought his guitar and he was playing Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison, of all songs. And it was that song, that little doo-doo-doo-doo-doo opening riff thing, that it was just like, because I'd been interested in other things. My mom had always told me I should be a drummer. But when I saw him playing that, I was like, nah, that's it. I want to play guitar.
So Brown Eyed Girl is the song that got you into music.
Yes. Ironic that I married a girl without brown eyes. But.
And blue eyes and blue hair. That's funny. So how old were you when you first started playing the guitar?
So I guess I was about 15 officially when I started learning how to play guitar. My mom had bought me a poster to put on the back of my bedroom door and said, whenever you can play all of these chords, then we'll take you to get lessons. You know, get the foundation down, and then you can take it somewhere and do something with it. I also played baseball, so literally every night that I was free was dedicated to baseball. And so it was like, you know what, I'll just, like, I got all the chords down and then just started listening to songs and figuring out,
yeah,
he's got to be playing one of these, and I would sit there and figure it out until I got it right.
Trial and error.
And
yeah.
This was also before Ultimate Guitar. Not long before Ultimate Guitar, but it was still before Ultimate Guitar.
When Ultimate Guitar happened, it was like, I've been doing so much work, and now you give it all to me, and I don't have to do all that anymore. But it was great for ear training.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I don't think I would be where I am now with just being able to, like, you know, aurally hear things, both in music and in production, had it not been for really training that, is this what's, no, something, like, most of this feels right, but there's something wrong, because all of the little, you know, accidentals and all of the extensions that you can add, you know, it sounds close to play a G minor chord when you're supposed to play a G minor 9, but there's still something missing.
There's a flavor that's left out.
Exactly. And it really, that is where I think I fell in love with it, because it was almost like a puzzle.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, I know I can do the things that he's doing, but why doesn't it sound the same?
Right. Yeah, and so it pushed you to kind of figure that out. I think you and I are similar in the beginning stages of us playing guitar, because we both started with guitar. Literally doing a very similar process of playing by ear and learning how to hear patterns with intervals and things like that, and chord qualities, and literally just trying to figure out songs that we were listening to.
Yeah, absolutely.
In our room, because I did the same thing. I had like a boombox, and I had all these CDs that I would listen to. I would sit there and try to figure out the chords that I was listening to on the boombox in a very similar way. And then I figured out how to transpose on my own somehow by just figuring out the math. So, but that kind of atmosphere can really push your creativity and teach you how to problem solve, and strengthens your ear for future. So it kind of lays that foundation for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's neat. What was your first guitar? We have it here, don't we?
Technically, no. My first guitar was a J. Terzer
Okay.
Strat copy. It was red
Okay.
and black. It did not see much use because it wouldn't stay in tune. Like, I even remember taking it to my uncle one time and saying, like, why isn't this working? And he was like, because you bought a
My
$50
guitar's
guitar
broken.
from the Sears catalog.
The Sears catalog! Oh my gosh. We're only, like, wait, you're 29. I'm 28. We're only in our late 20s. We're not that old.
Physically.
Physically. I'm an old soul.
So my first real guitar was, it was a hand-me-down from my uncle, actually. Once I started, you know, once there was a little bit of progress, he was like, here, take this home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your guitar is broken. Use a working one. And it was
It's one that stays in tune.
Yeah, it was a Seagull 25th or 50th anniversary. Beautiful sounding guitar. I played that all day, every day for,
Yeah.
you know, 6-7 years until I got in a car accident and it was in the back and the trunk got locked shut. It just wedged shut and I literally could not get the guitar out. It was the strangest thing. I mean, I got rear-ended, so it makes sense.
Right.
But,
How long was it stuck in there?
a couple months probably in the middle of
How
summer.
did you get it out?
Because
we had it.
Yeah, we salvaged the car. We took it somewhere, and they were literally ripping it apart. And well, they were ripping other cars apart, and we saw that they had the ability to do that. And we said, "Can you cut the trunk open and get this guitar?"
My guitar's in there. Oh, that's great.
But it was in the middle of the summer, so it was sitting out there in the heat for months.
Oh, yeah.
And so the neck got warped, the electronics are all busted, so it just
Yeah.
became a wall decoration.
Yeah, it became our wedding guest book.
Yep.
Or half of it. Mine was the other half. Alright, so, playing guitar, which I'm sure led to playing with other musicians and playing in bands. So, tell me about your beginning stages of your band experiences.
Bandness.
Your bandness.
Bandability.
Bandability.
Around the same time, again, I was big into baseball. A guy that played on my my baseball team, his name was Jeremiah. We hit it off, and we decided to, same as you, grew up in the CCM world.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do some worship covers.
Oh,
Hey,
CCM.
From the Inside Out and Mighty to Save and
I still like
my
From the
goodness.
Inside Out.
I mean, like literally, I was having a conversation with Aleli about this a couple days ago of why we have literally every Hillsong song from beginning until like now.
She was showing me that on her phone, how many Hillsong albums she had, and I was like, I didn't even have that many.
Yeah, and so we literally, we probably covered 50 different songs.
Wow.
Just the two of us,
Yeah.
an acoustic guitar, and him singing and me playing guitar. Eventually, I learned to sing as well, but so that turned in for the two of us. Then we started bringing our friends in. We brought a keyboardist in, we brought a drummer in, we brought a guitar player, and then a bass player, and we kind of formed the first band.
Right. And were these all like friends from like church, or were they like a mix of like school and friends and from church or neighborhood people? Or
Yeah, so I met Jeremiah through baseball, and then almost everybody else through him, because I was homeschooled, so I didn't really do much aside from baseball and guitar.
Right. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's actually looking back, it is weird how.
I'm very thirsty. Sorry.
It's okay. Looking back, it is very weird how we all met and how we all ended up playing together, but it was fun. It was a ride for sure.
Sounds like it. So it was worship covers and like church music stuff, and then Missing Number happened, which was your first kind of like original music project. Can you tell us how that? Or no, it was Among the Few.
Yeah, it was.
It was Among the Few and then Missing Number.
The five of us had dubbed the name. If you ever need a band name, go on Facebook and just the first post, pick 3 words that kind of sound like a band name. The first thing you see. Somehow it works.
That
every
could be
time.
really bad.
Every time, somehow it works.
Depending on your what's in your feed.
Anyway, so yeah, we as among the few, we played for about 3 years, locally in Cincinnati and surrounding pretty much 3-hour circle.
Neat, yeah.
And then that disbanded, and well,
That was the band that you lost your guitar with, right?
yeah,
Among the few.
yeah. If you're gonna do guitar stage tricks, use strap locks.
Yeah.
I wish we still had that video.
I wish we did, because I would totally put it in as a
Yeah.
clip. It's so funny watching you, just like the look on your face when your guitar goes flying down the hallway behind you.
Not my guitar.
Oh no, that's right.
The guitar that I was borrowing, yes.
Wait, whose was it? I forgot.
A guy named Blake that I knew.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was kind of a early musical mentor, but yeah. So
Hashtag fail.
yeah.
It was bad, but it makes for a great story. All right. So then, missing number.
So yeah, Missing Number. We played for. Technically, we're still a band. It was the first kind of taste of doing something musical and doing it seriously was like, because it was something. It wasn't something where we just felt like we were going to play shows whenever. So I guess that's what I would call my first band, my first real band.
Right.
Other than just a group of people jamming.
And the band that you like wanted to actually like build a career with, kind of thing.
I mean, we kept it a secret at first. We just called it the side project, and whenever one of us would just do this during practice, that meant like, hey, stick around a little bit longer. I've got something else to show you. Yeah.
The side project. That's funny. When you were with Missing Number, that's kind of when you started to experiment with production.
Yeah.
Right.
Segue. So I guess what got me into production, I had been interning for a couple different churches. One of them in particular, they played with backing tracks through Ableton Live. They could control start-stop everything they wanted. It blew my mind. I saw 5 people up on the stage, nobody with a violin, and yet there's a huge, it sounded like an orchestra behind them. One of the bands that I had loved, still love, but was really into at the time was Red, and they did a lot of that. And so it was like, oh, wait, you guys are doing what they're doing?
Right.
And it just like these two worlds collided, and it was like, oh, like, how do you do this? So the worship leader kind of took me under his wing and showed me kind of the ins and outs of Ableton and like kind of the workflow of making tracks. And then I went home, and what I would do was download songs that I liked and see what I could do with them and play with them and change them, or even just download songs I liked and try to recreate the backing track.
Yeah.
So that
super cool.
me and Jeremiah at the time could use them.
Oh, cool, yeah.
That was the original mindset. Then moving forward, when I started to get really into it, was with Missing Number, and we really wanted to have that larger than life sound. It was back before a lot of the marriage of analog and electronic music happened. A lot of like the 21 Pilots stuff, like a lot of that kind of stuff where it's like typical instruments, but then sounds. It's not necessarily just a keyboard or a guitar or a bass or a violin. You could have car tires as percussion, or anything you want as part of your music, and be able to manipulate it and make grooves and beats out of everyday objects, or like take one thing and make it sound a different way, or like make it sound like there's 8 guitar players playing at one time,
or even like sounds that are inside of different plugins and programs and stuff like that too. It's
Absolutely.
a mixture of samples and electronic music kind of composition, I guess. Yeah.
And so we took that and ran with it, and that's where I fell in love with it, and it just became like, I mean, I spent all day every day doing it. I mean, we probably demoed out 20, 30 songs over the course of the first bit, and just went to town with anything we could. A lot of it ended up being thrown away because it was too much.
Yeah.
But
it's like you have to like go overboard to learn where the threshold is, and figure out, okay, that was too much, let's dial it back a little bit and find that balance. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So then when you started to get like more, when you started to get more passionate about production through this experimentation, what kind of made you decide to want to do that professionally over, you know, being a guitar player or performance-based kind of musician?
Oh gosh, I still don't know. I really don't. Because I think it'll depend day to day. There are days where I'm like, I want to do this, and there are days where I want to do this, and there are days where I want to do this. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I never have seen myself as a master of one thing, just like,
right.
the wear of many hats, master of none kind of thing. And I don't know why that always resonated with me. There was something my dad said when I was younger at one point, and it just stuck with me. I don't even remember what it was. It's just there. And it just, when I heard that, or like when I started realizing kind of that's what I was doing, I felt very proud about it. Like I felt a lot of pride in it.
Yeah.
But as far as why I want to do it now, more so, like why I have this as opposed to a wall of amps. Mm-hmm. It really just comes down to practicality in a way. There's a million guitar players out there, and probably 998,000 of them are better than me. And so it's like, I could sit there, you know, you spend all of your time and energy working
right.
on one thing, and the guitar thing I felt had been done. There was nothing that I really felt like I could add to that.
Right.
The production world, I felt I could.
Right.
I felt like I had a unique sense of the way that I do things, workflow, that it just made sense. So it's like, I still don't really know why, but it makes sense.
Like it involves every part of the musical, I guess, process, and you got to touch everything, and you just wanted to be in as much of it as you could, so it just made sense that production would be where you would go. Yeah.
There were always two guitar players, but there was always one person running sound.
Yeah.
So.
And the need, feeling the need in your situation, and being someone who could offer that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as far as production as a like term goes, or a definition, I feel like there's a lot of confusion about like what exactly production is, because there's like audio engineering, and there's like live sound, and then there's production, and some of these things kind of overlap and they bleed into each other. What would you say is production, and like what separates that from everything else?
So I feel like production is one of those words that's tough, because it, to me, and it could, the meaning can change depending on who's talking about it. But to me, the production is anything from inception of the song until release of the song. In this world, because all of it, I mean, you break down the word production, and you're producing. What are you producing? You're producing a song, and so it gets very, you know, when we get to production, then we'll do, well, we're kind of in production right now. What part of the, and I think so it's production is the overarching thing, but then you have to break it down into each individual part of it.
Right.
And so you've got the songwriting phase, or the inception phase, or the creativity phase, and then you've got the actual rubber meets the road, where you're putting everything down.
Right.
And demoing, maybe. Then you've got I mean, in an ideal world, then the woodshedding process, where you can bring in, whether it's you bring in a band to play with you, and you kind of you figure out your parts, and you figure out what's working and what's not, and
in the context of the bigger picture. Yeah,
in the context of the bigger picture. Or if it's a solo artist, or, you know, singer-songwriter demo, you know, maybe you can skip that phase, but then you go into the recording process, and then you go into the editing process, and then you go into the mixing process, and then you go into the mastering process.
Right.
And I mean, there could be any number of those pulled in or added. You can add or remove any amount of them as needed per your production.
Right.
And so, to me, production is the whole thing.
Right, and that depending on what kind of production that you're producing will determine the different nuances of the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then, as far as like someone who's a producer versus like someone like me who's a songwriter, what is like, how would you define a producer's role in the process of this production?
Really, it's just it's the final check, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It's the person that, I mean, it's the wedding planner.
Mm.
May not be the wedding planner's wedding,
Mm-hmm.
to the bride and groom's wedding. They tell the
Right.
wedding planner what they want,
Right.
and then the wedding planner is the person who's supposed to know everything about how to make that happen.
Yeah, that's a really great analogy. I like that.
I think producers especially in entertainment
Uh-huh.
and modern social norms, the producer is the guy that's like, no, that's not right, you have to do it again. You know, kind of like
Yeah.
the devil on the
director.
shoulder, the director, the guy shouting commands. But to me, it's just
The
person-
sergeant.
it's just the person that says, was this how you were trying to make that come across?
Right,
Because
yeah.
to me, either it is or it isn't. And they're one step removed from the process enough that they can make those decisions and they can say, yes, this is or is not coming through
Right.
the
yeah.
way you're intending it to. Given any different artist and any different producer, I mean, that's just something that you have to decide going into it. You know,
Right.
how much or how little, who's going to produce? Because you
Right.
can self-produce. You can
Right.
you can bring in people to produce.
Right.
It's very, very flexible. In the studio, I think this is a place where it gets very confused too. What is a producer? The engineer is not the producer, but the engineer is not the producer.
Right.
The producer is not always an engineer, but there are times where the producer is an engineer. It's more which piece of this are you doing today?
Right.
And literally for every single every band, it's going to be different. Every individual person is going to be different. Every songwriter is going to be different. Even producers. Every producer is going to think of themselves differently.
Right, yeah. Okay, so the role of a producer kind of being like this wedding planner type of role of someone like an artist coming to you and saying, I want this, and you knowing what needs to happen in order to make that happen. How can the ignorance of this role like negatively affect the creative process? And like the relationship between a producer and an artist is like really, really important. And like both you and I have learned that being two of those exact people, artist, producer, like in a relationship creatively, but also outside of that too. It's like how important is that relationship, and how can like ignorance of roles negatively affect the creative expression in the long run?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me that I've experienced is this guy wants to change my song. This guy wants, he thinks I didn't do it good enough.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks I didn't do it right.
Yeah.
And it's 99% of the time, no, I see what you were trying to do. If you want it to come across, I would suggest doing this instead.
Right.
And a lot of times it's a very simple thing, like, compressors or EQs or
Mm-hmm.
any number of the tools that a engineer or producer that would use, any of this stuff.
Yeah.
The am I not good enough, and thinking that the producer is there to bust your balls the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
or to tell you that you were wrong. No, that wasn't good enough. Do it again.
Right.
The producer's role is just to make sure that the artist is happy.
Right.
And most of the time, the producer's advice is going to help out if they're worth their weight.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
they know what they're talking about, if
Right.
they have studied production, if they have studied engineering, if they are knowledgeable in their craft.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And
They'll know how to help an artist. They'll know how to suggest the right things for the right moment at the in the right context.
And that just comes from experience. That just comes from
Right, from
sitting
doing
there
it.
and using it day in
Yeah.
and day out. You have a very specific I mean, it's just like you. It's like somebody sits down at your rev amp and they're trying to get a clean tone and they're on the red channel. And it's like, obviously that's not going to work.
Right. Yeah, it's using the right tools in the right way at the right time. Yeah, all about like how you apply the tool set and where. Yeah, most definitely. So like I would say like communication is like super important. Like I feel like part of the producer's role is also very personal too, like knowing
Therapist.
Yeah, like there's a psychology behind this, like knowing how to get inside an artist's head and like figure out what makes them tick and what's going to make them comfortable, like what's going to help them perform
Absolutely.
To the best of their ability to get the take that you need that's going to translate through the tools that you have to the audience in the way that it needs to come across. So it's like this, there's so many different facets to like your role. It's not just, pressing buttons. Like there's this whole like social aspect of it that takes time to master. And, I feel like some people don't really think about that. And I know professionals obviously do. That's why they're professionals. But like, especially like young producers and things like that want to work, directly with artists, they don't really think about that part of it. They, are just thinking about the knobs and the sounds and things and not necessarily the person. So it's like, I feel like for you, that's something that I know you definitely also obsess over. And not just the knobs, but I know you obsess over like the relational and personal aspect of it, which I think is, in my opinion, is what separates like really great producers from kind of mediocre ones, is like actually understanding the full scope of your role and how it can be successful, and not just how you can get the right edits or
absolutely,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and there's a definite. I mean, that's been the source of many sleepless nights for me. Is like,
So speaking of personal and communication and working with different kinds of artists and personalities and emotions and all this kind of stuff, what are some things you think that like every artist should know ahead of time before coming in and working with a producer or seeking out a producer? That can help them be prepared for this process and it be successful.
I guess the first thing I would say was just have a conversation. Define what it is that you need. I feel like I write very good songs, but I'm not very good at drums. I need somebody to help me produce drums. I have a firm foundation of a chord structure and a general rhythm, but I don't have lyrics. That's one type of production work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then I have songs, but I need an album. That's a different kind of production.
Gotcha.
I have songs that need help and need to be recorded. And so I guess really finding the producer that is good for what you need, because you could hire somebody and say, hey, I need a producer, and they are thinking they're going to come in and help you write drum parts or guitar parts, and you come in and they come in and you already have drum parts finished.
Right.
And they're like, well, what do I do then?
Right. Yeah.
So I honestly think a lot of confusion. Just have the conversation up front. Find out what you need, and then keep it an ongoing conversation too. Have the conversation up front and define every single project, what you need help with or what you don't.
Okay, so with artists, communication and like knowing what you need, so that needs can be met and we're all on the same page and we know what we're going for. Artists, I think you're definitely right. Like artists should be aware of their weaknesses and like where they can improve and when the necessary time is to reach out for help and all that to get a producer involved, for sure. But I also I know that we've had conversations about like the general public and like listeners who are listening to music who are just very ignorant about like what really goes into this process of producing music. Like this overarching process that you were mentioning earlier of like from inception of the song all the way to its release is an entire production. And so there's, you know, a kind of a veil of what really, the work that really goes into to making this happen. And so, you know, what would you say maybe one thing could be, a few things, like to the general listener, that you think they should know about production and what it takes to really do what we do?
How long is this video supposed to be?
Right. We could go on it. Well, that's what this whole channel can communicate, but from your place in it, in your perspective. Yeah.
As somebody who's in the production world, one of the most frustrating things is people assuming that they know things. One of the biggest frustrations is just that it's a button that you hit and then it's done. That a mix or whatever is just something that happens. It's equally as involved as the songwriting process, usually more. Mm-hmm. Because you're breaking down every single piece of the song. You only get so much finite real estate in in a fader. You only can go to 0. You can't go to 1,000,000.
Right.
And so you have an amount of stuff that you can put in there, and it takes a lot of carving. It's like carving a statue, a little bit away here, a little bit away here. I think one thing that gets very frustrating is when a song comes out that doesn't sound good. A lot of times the general public writes that band off and says that band is horrible.
Yeah, this is like one of my favorite points that you've brought up, and it's a reality that just really sucks because there's so many good bands that are just really good musicians, but like because the production sucks or because the audio engineer behind the live soundboard at the show doesn't know or doesn't care, it doesn't come across in the way that they want it to, and so then everybody thinks it's the band.
Absolutely.
And then they don't get their music, heard or to the right people, and it's just a sucky reality. And if people knew more about what really goes into everything, I feel like that would happen less. Yeah. But it's kind of an inside long-running joke with me and a bunch of my friends, but I still honestly believe that the best song ever recorded hasn't been heard by most people. Like, I really think that there's something out there that somebody biffed, honestly, and it would be like a chart topper that just never happened, and that kind of like... It's a fun thought train sometimes to go down. I think that's part of the reason why I wanted to work with... my goal is never to necessarily work with, the top of the top bands. Like, I want to work with people who are wanting to take that next step, and they want to go to that next, right,
where they don't know, like, where am I in all of this? Am I a good guitar player or not? I've been doing this a long time, but I don't know if it sounds good. Is this how this is supposed to work? Is this how this is supposed to work? And so it becomes this thing where if you don't quite know the production route and how everything happens, it's very, very understandable why you would assume that a bad sounding recording is a bad band.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, you can't polish a turd in the studio, you can't...
Right.
You can't auto-tune me to sound like you. It's just not going to work,
Right. There are some things we can't do.
Yes, absolutely. There is nothing different physically between you and your favorite singer, aside from the fact that they've done it more. They've just done it a lot. And by doing it, you get better at it.
Yeah. However,
the difference between somebody, and it's part of the psychological thing that we were talking about. Any person that has come through this studio, in my opinion, has, like I said, has the potential to do something just as amazing.
Yeah.
And 99% of the time, the hindrances don't come from lack of, a good song or lack of a good melody. They come from the fact that that singer was hearing himself in his headphones through $10,000 worth of gear.
Yeah.
So when he was hearing himself back, he had the confidence to just go for it. And if you don't have, I'm sorry, but if you don't have compressors and EQs and ways to shape the tone of a sound before it gets to your headphones while you're recording vocals.
Yeah.
It
Woo.
feels so lifeless.
Oh, it does. And like I've totally been there. Like as a vocalist, it's like if you're not hearing the breadth of your voice in your ears, like the full like character of it in your ears when you're recording, like it really defeats you and kills your confidence if you don't sound good in your ears. Even, like, honestly, even if I miss a note, like, even if I, am off key slightly or something like that, like, where I didn't quite make it, the fact that I sound like myself, like I hear myself in my own head kind of thing, I'm just like, oh, whoops, that's okay, let's do that again. Like, I'm not... I can get back up a whole lot easier and deliver it and have confidence to do it again and again and again when I feel like I'm still sounding good, like despite, not quite doing exactly what I want. But yeah, I think that is such an important thing to touch on because, so much of us, especially when you're first starting out in music and you're trying to, you want to sound like, the people that you love, and you don't have that knowledge of, like, what it really takes to create that, and then you try to do it out of nothing, and then you're like, man, I could never do this. It can...
Well, I mean, honestly, it takes me back to, we were talking about my uncle's guitar and how he told me mine was boo-boo. I remember very specifically, it was a J. Terzer electric guitar, Strat. It came with a cable, came with an amp.
Yeah.
That amp was, it was a Roland Jazz Cube. Not capable of distortion at all.
Ew.
Cleanest sound you could ever have, and I wanted to sound like Eddie Van Halen.
Right. It's not gonna work.
And so it's literally the same thing. If you don't have the tool, I got so discouraged because I couldn't figure out how to make my guitar sing like that.
Right. Yeah.
And honestly, it's the reason why I ended up with my uncle's... I'm not complaining. The reason why I ended up with my uncle's guitar instead of,
right,
pursuing an electric guitar. After that, it was like, oh, I got an electric, but it doesn't sound the way I want it. I don't want it. Like, this isn't what I wanted. I want that instead.
Yeah.
And just the psychological, it's not the way that I wanted. When you're, especially if you're the songwriter and you go into that booth and it's not the way you wanted, after the first time you hear it, the first time you hear it.
Yeah, it really is like that first time can really make or break it. Like that first time can really make or break the rest of the sessions. But I also think too, like, it's important for artists to just know that, like, what you're listening to, like, you by yourself don't sound like that. Like, you by yourself dry don't sound like the studio recorded version of your favorite artist. Like, not yet. You know what I mean? It's like there's so much that has to go into that. So when you step in the vocal booth and like you hear dry vocals, just know that that's not... First of all, your producer shouldn't have you hear dry vocals. But second of all, if you do end up in that situation, just know that that's not how it's supposed to be. Like, that's not a reflection of, like, the final product.
Well, I mean, I always think of it like an Instagram picture. Like, you're what you are hearing, and this goes for live as well as in the studio. Somebody cooked you this amazing pizza, and you took a 4x4 square picture of the middle of it. And, and that's what you're getting direct off a mic, because what you're hearing in the real world is you're hearing, like right now, I'm hearing my voice bounce off that wall, that wall, that wall, that wall, that floor, and that ceiling.
Yeah, that's a lot of reverberation.
And when that happens, it gives it life and character.
Yeah.
And you get rid of all of that by putting a mic in front of you, because that mic is listening directly to your mouth, not everything else.
Right.
And there's years and years and years worth of different miking techniques and different sound techniques to get different sounds. But by today's production, and almost anybody watching this video is going to be in that world of big, fat, thick, loud sounds, not jazz recordings or big band where
Right.
or an orchestral thing where a lot of it is you don't want that stuff. You want it to sound as dry as possible. But that's where all those other miking techniques come in. So for this application of it, and that's why it's again back to, you always have to have that conversation
What you want.
of what you want.
Yep. Sorry for the jarring change of scenery here. I realized while I was editing that the outro to this video did not record. See my face right now. So I'm going to do the outro here on the other side of the house. And I hope you enjoyed this episode with my husband Nick Toebbe talking all about production. And there's so much more that we could talk about on this topic, especially when we go into like audio engineering and live sound. And so we're going to have him back on the Creative Quest here in a couple weeks. But the next episode is going to be just me, and I'm going to share some more thoughts. Hi, Maybell. I'm going to share some more thoughts that have been stewing in my brain about this journey of becoming a full-time creator, specifically in the music realm and in the music industry. And so I hope you stay tuned for that. If you liked this video, like the video, like it, and put your little subscribe button there. You want to press that too, and ring the bell so that you can be notified every time we upload a brand new video. And I will see you guys next time right here on the Creative Quest.